All right, so right now we're going to check out a video between Catholic apologist Jimmy Akin and skeptic, agnostic, atheist, New Testament critic Bart Ehrman. Now, if you've watched my previous video, which I'll put a little picture of here, that was about Bart addressing when Jesus was at his trial before Caiaphas. And now Bart didn't understand what heresy Jesus committed in order to him to have a blasphemy charge. And so with respect to that, it's a massive hole in Bart's arguments as to Jesus never declaring himself divine, because it's clearly a divine claim. So he always has a difficulty addressing this particular issue. And in this debate, Jimmy actually brings it up, and we hear a different response from Bart in relation to the alleged blasphemy that committed according to Caiaphas. So it's worth listening to. And I just want to add this. One of the reasons why we actually address this issue, I don't have vendetta against Bart Ehrman, right? He is a brilliant scholar, but his arguments are used by atheists, Jehovah's Witnesses, Unitarians, Muslims. They are so prominent in the, the New Testament skeptic arena in relation to Jesus's deity, in relation to Trinitarianism, and in relation to the historicity and the reliability of the New Testaments. It is very, very important that Christians are aware who Bart is and how to contend with these arguments. And this here potentially shows Bart being dogmatic about his views. So let's just have a watch of this video.
That Bart is making between the disciples believing that Jesus was God, which I think happened very early on, and Jesus himself claiming to be God. Mm-hmm. Where I would disagree is I think in the synoptics we actually do have indications that Jesus regarded himself as divine. He doesn't preach it openly because he'd get stoned, duh. And when he does mention it, even there indirectly in John, in public, they recognize what he's saying and they pick up stones to stone him. So yeah, he was on the down low about the I'm God thing. But he does indicate that he's the Son of God, and he is thus equal to the Father in divinity. The same way, Bart, you have a son, right?
I'm not anywhere nearly as great as he.
Well, but you have a son. Your son shares your nature as a human being, and so in that sense you're equal, even though in a patriarchal society you would outrank your son.
Yeah, no, that in our society that's the way we look at it. Of course, in ancient Israel, the Son of God, the first one explicitly called the Son of God is Solomon in 2 Samuel 7:14. And so I don't think that Solomon was of the same essence as the Father.
No, I recognize the term Son of God has multiple meanings, but Jesus claimed to it was unique. And one place that we see that is in the Gospel of Mark, when Jesus is on so the very first Gospel, Jesus is on trial before the high priest. The high priest says, "Tell us, are you the Son of the Blessed or not?" And Jesus agrees obliquely and says, "And from now on, you shall see the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven," which is a reference to Daniel 7. Now, the high priest then says, "You have heard the blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses?" So the high priest regarded this statement as blasphemy, which is a direct offense against God in speech. Well, claiming to be the Messiah was not blasphemy. Claiming to be the Son of God in a Solomonic sense is not blasphemy. So why does he regard it as blasphemy? It's because of the reference to Daniel about you shall see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven to be enthroned with God. That's what's happening in that passage. And in Second Temple Judaism, which is when we are, there was a controversy about what is now in the scholarly community referred to as the two powers in heaven doctrine, where Jewish...
Now, just on this note, the Two Powers in Heaven heresy, there's an awesome book called Two Powers in Heaven by Alan Segal. I encourage you all to read it. It's very important for those people that feel that Trinitarian theology was created at the Council of Nicaea. It really shows that there was issues that for early Second Temple Judaism to reconcile certain scriptures about what was the visible Yahweh and the invisible one. Genesis 19:24. We even have Daniel 7 about these two thrones in heaven. So keep that in mind.
People had been looking at passages in the Old Testament that seem to imply, yeah, there's this Yahweh in heaven, but there's this other divine figure too, who's sometimes called the second Yahweh. And Daniel 7 was one of those passages. And so it was recognized that Yahweh is enthroned, and then next to him, the second Yahweh is enthroned according to two powers in heaven theorists. And so by saying, I'm that Son of Man who you're going to see enthroned in heaven, Jesus is claiming to be God, and that's why the high priest and the others regard it as blasphemy.
Dr. Ehrman, the question was for you. So
I would just say that certainly would be convincing if what Jesus said was, I am the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. In his reply to the high priest in Mark 14:62, it's not what he says. He says, you will see the Son of Man. There's no indication in the passage he's talking about himself. Jesus in the Gospels talks about the Son of Man, but so anyway, this one could go on all night because there are people who've written very big books about the Son of Man.
Yeah.
I think next question is for Jimmy Akin over here.
You'll see that Jimmy there wanted to come back at Bart and how Bart actually sort of fobs off the question because he knows there's an issue. The idea that Jesus isn't referring to himself as that Son of Man is beyond ridiculous. There is numerous times in the New Testament that Jesus refers to himself as the Son of Man, as a title, as he does the Son of God. And Bart is aware of this. For Bart to differentiate the statement when Jesus says, I am, and you will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven, you know, this idea that it's a different person that Jesus is suggesting is not fair and it's not reasonable. And it's actually a different answer to what he gave in the previous video as to he's not sure as to where the blasphemy happened. So you'll see this is a potential example. I'm not saying it is, but it's a potential example of even the fair and reasonable, data-driven scholar Bart Ehrman potentially being dogmatic in his views. So in essence, it's people like Bart really that has opened up sort of Christians' eyes as well as to how to deeper their understanding of the Bible. So in a lot of ways, he can be a gift for people. But simultaneously, he has turned a lot of people away from Christianity based on his research. So instead of hating on this person or anything like that, we should be praying for him. We should be praying for his salvation, that he has an encounter with the Lord. So I think we'll just end it at that.